Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm your brother Abu Talazak. Welcome all of you. The summer has come, and it's so hot here in Saudi Arabia. But I was wondering, like on the day of judgment, when the sun will be drawn too close, that even if we raise our hands, we can touch the sun. It'll be drawn too close that people will be drowning in their own sweat, people will be perspiring. And even Prophet ﷺ said that people will be drowning in their own sweat, some up to the knees, some up to the waist, some up to the chest, and some up to the neck, and some up to the nose. What will be the condition on the day of judgment? But in fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the shade of His throne, the shade of His arsh, to 7 types of people on the day of judgment. The first one will be Imam al-Adil, the just ruler, the just person. He doesn't care about any relations. He doesn't care about who the other person is. He doesn't care even if his own brother is caught in bribery, even if his own brother is caught in adultery. So he keeps justice at the upper hand. So this person will be given the shade of the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. And the second will be the person whose youth and whose young age is spent in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the service of His deen, in the service of His religion. And you find many people out here, especially in our country, who say that we'll give our service to deen once we become old. We'll give our services in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala once we become old. So that's a lame excuse. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the shade of His arsh to those people who spend their young age in the service and in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And third will be the person whose heart is attached to masjid, who prays at masjid, who spends most of his time in masjid, reading Quran, attending halaqas, and praying 5 times a day, attending all the prayers with Jamaat. And the fourth kind of person will be the one who makes friendship for the sake of Allah and breaks friendship for the sake of Allah. For example, we always hear it saying, a person is known by the company he keeps and the company he avoids. So a person is known by the company he keeps and the company he avoids. And a person is given the shade of the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment for keeping the company with the people for the sake of Allah and avoiding the company with the people for the sake of Allah. And the fifth type of people will be those, will be the person who is called by a temptress, who is called by a nude and naked lady to have sexual intercourse, to commit adultery and fornication. And he says, Inni khaf Allah, I fear Allah, I don't want to come near you. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the shade of His throne on the day of judgment. And the sixth type of person will be the one who wakes up early in the night, who cries remembering his past sins, who prays to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he spends most of his time in seclusion praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remembering his past sins, asking for forgiveness, asking for mercy. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the shade of His throne on the day of judgment to this kind of person. And the seventh will be the one who spends in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that if he gives with his right hand, even his left hand doesn't know about that. When he gives with his right hand, his left hand doesn't know about that. That means he doesn't give for show off. He doesn't give for for getting known among people. He doesn't give to tell people that how pious he is. But he gives only for the sake of Allah, to help the poor. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the shade of His throne on the day of judgment. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among these seven people, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from the torment of the grave and the torment of the hellfire, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala admit us in the paradise. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.